God is moving you in silence right now. And I need you to really hear that. Not as a nice thing to say, not as something to put on a motivational poster, but as a real, specific, honest truth about the season you are currently in. Because I think a lot of you are in a silent season right now, and you are misreading it completely. You are reading the silence as absence. You are reading the stillness as being stuck. You are reading the quiet as evidence that nothing is happening, that God has forgotten you, that the thing you've been believing for is somehow slipping further away. And I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about it in a way that actually reaches the real place where you're sitting with this, not the surface version, the real version. Because here's the truth. And I want to say it plainly right from the start. Some of the most significant movements in a person's life happen in the seasons where nothing appears to be moving at all. The silence is not the absence of God. Sometimes the silence is God working in ways that are simply too deep, too layered, too intricate to make noise yet. And the moment you learn to stop resisting the silence and start trusting it, everything about how you move through this season shifts. So let's get into it. First, let me talk about what a silent season actually is, because I don't think we define it clearly enough. And because of that, we end up confusing a lot of different things for the same thing. A silent season is not a punishment. It is not God pulling back from you because you did something wrong. It is not abandonment. It is not evidence that your faith is too small or your prayers aren't landing. A silent season is a season of preparation, deep preparation, the kind that happens underground, out of sight, before anything visible breaks through the surface. Think about a seed. When you plant a seed in the ground, there is a period, sometimes a long period, where absolutely nothing appears to be happening. From the outside, from above the ground, it just looks like dirt. Nothing moving, nothing growing. And if you didn't know better, if you didn't understand what was happening underneath the surface, you might conclude that nothing was happening at all, that the seed was dead, that you planted it in the wrong place, that maybe it just wasn't going to grow. But underneath the surface, something extraordinary is taking place. The seed is breaking open. The root system is forming. The whole infrastructure that the eventual plant is going to need to stand on. All of that is being built in the dark, in the quiet, before a single visible thing appears above ground. And I really believe, that a lot of you are in that underground season right now, and you are standing above the ground, looking at the dirt, seeing nothing, and concluding that nothing is there. But I want to tell you, something is forming, something is building, something that is going to need every single day of this quiet season to be strong enough to hold what's coming. Second thing, silence is where God does His most personal work in you. Because think about it, when life is loud, when things are moving and busy and full, there is always noise to hide in. There is always something to do, somewhere to be, something to manage. And in all of that noise, the deeper work, the work of actually examining who you are, what you believe, what needs to change in you before you can carry what's next, that work gets deferred. You just keep moving, keep going, keep doing. And the internal stuff just gets pushed further back, buried deeper, because there's always something more urgent demanding your attention. But in the silence, in the season where the usual noise isn't there, where the calendar is emptier, where the relationships have shifted, where the momentum you used to feel has gone quiet, in that season, you come face to face with yourself, the real you. Not the busy version, not the performing version, not the version that's always in motion and always has somewhere to be. Just you, with God, in the quiet. And that is uncomfortable. I won't pretend it isn't, because what you find in that kind of stillness isn't always easy to look at. You find the fears you've been outrunning, the wounds you've been too busy to tend, the patterns you've been repeating without noticing because the noise was too loud to hear yourself clearly. And God uses the silence to surface all of that, not to condemn you, not to expose you to shame, but because that stuff cannot be carried into what's next. It has to be dealt with here, in the quiet, before the next chapter opens. Third thing, the silence is also where your sensitivity gets sharpened. And I think this is one of the most underappreciated gifts of a silent season. When life is loud, your spiritual sensitivity gets dulled. Not because anything is wrong with you, just because there's too much input, too much noise competing for your attention. And the still, small voice, the one that guides you, the one that says, go this way, not that way, wait, move, this person, not that one. That voice gets harder to hear when everything else is loud. But in the silence, that voice gets clearer. The intuition sharpens. The discernment deepens. You start noticing things you would have completely missed in the middle of a busy season. You start feeling things more accurately, reading situations more clearly, knowing things in your spirit before your mind has caught up to the knowing. And that sharpened sensitivity is not incidental. It is preparation. Because what is coming next is going to require you to be able to hear clearly, to discern accurately, to move when you're supposed to move and wait when you're supposed to wait. And the silence is training you for that. The silence is calibrating you, getting you tuned to the right frequency so that when the noise comes back, and it will come back, you don't lose the signal. Now I want to talk about the resistance, because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck in a silent season, and I want to be honest about it. When the silence comes, when things get quiet, when the momentum stalls, when the usual evidence of forward movement disappears, the natural human response is to resist it, to try to manufacture noise, to fill the quiet with activity, with plans, with movement for the sake of movement, to force something to happen because the stillness feels too much like falling behind, too much like failure, too much like being left out of something everyone else seems to be participating in. And I understand that impulse. I've lived it. There is something almost unbearable about stillness when you're someone who is wired for purpose, who can feel the weight of their assignment, who knows there's something they're supposed to be building. The stillness feels like wasted time. It feels like you're losing ground. It feels like everybody else is moving and you're standing still. But here's what resistance costs you in a silent season. When you resist the silence, when you try to force movement before the preparation is complete, you interrupt the process. You pull the seed out of the ground before the root system has formed. And what you get is something that looks like growth but doesn't have the foundation to sustain itself. You build something quickly and it collapses just as quickly because the underground work that was supposed to happen didn't get to finish. And then you wonder why it didn't hold. You wonder why the momentum didn't last. You wonder why the thing you worked so hard to build didn't become what you thought it was going to become. And the answer, a lot of the time, is that it was built on incomplete preparation. The silence was interrupted before it was finished. Don't interrupt the silence. Let it finish its work. Let me talk about trust for a minute, because I think trust is really what's being asked of you in a silent season. Not activity, not strategy, not figuring out what you're supposed to be doing next. Just trust. Plain, costly, evidence-scarce trust. And trust is hard. Real trust. Not the easy kind, not the trust that kicks in when things are going well and the evidence is favorable. I mean, the kind of trust that holds on when there's nothing to hold on to. The kind that says, I believe something is happening even though I cannot see it. I believe this quiet has a purpose, even though I cannot feel what that purpose is yet. I believe I have not been forgotten, even though everything in my circumstances is telling me otherwise. That kind of trust is genuinely hard. And I don't want to minimize that by making it sound easy or by suggesting that if you just had more faith, the silence wouldn't bother you. The silence is going to bother you. It's supposed to bother you, in a way, because it's asking something of you that doesn't come naturally to most people. It's asking you to release control, to stop managing the timeline, to stop trying to figure out exactly what God is doing and just trust that He's doing something. Even in the quiet, especially in the quiet. And every day that you choose trust over resistance in this season, every day that you sit in the silence instead of running from it, that you let the stillness do its work instead of trying to force movement, that is a day of growth, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when it looks from the outside like nothing is happening. Something is happening. Something is always happening in a person who chooses trust over fear in the middle of a season they can't control. I want to address something that comes up in silent seasons that I think is really important to name, and that's comparison. Because when you're in a silent season, when your life is quiet and still, and not much seems to be happening on the surface, and then you look around at other people's lives and you see movement, announcements, progress, things opening up for them that aren't opening for you, that comparison can be devastating. It can make the silence feel like falling behind, like being passed over, like other people are getting what you've been praying for, and somehow it's going to someone else. And I want to say something very directly about that. What you see of other people's lives is almost never the full picture. You see the announcement, not the years of silence that preceded it. You see the open door, not the 10 closed ones that came before it. You see the breakthrough, not the preparation season that it was built on. And if you knew the full story, if you could see the whole journey, not just the moment, you would understand that most of the people whose forward movement you're watching from the outside had their own silent seasons. Long ones. Ones that looked from the outside exactly like yours looks right now, and they got through them. Not by comparing themselves to someone else, but by staying faithful to their own process, by trusting their own season, by showing up to their own preparation even when they couldn't see what it was preparing them for. That's the invitation for you right now. Not to match someone else's pace, not to force your season to look like somebody else's, but to be faithful to yours. To show up to the silence with as much intention and trust as you would show up to a season of visible momentum. Because the silence deserves your full presence just as much as anything else does. Maybe more. Let me say one more thing before I close, and it's this. The silence will end. I want you to know that. It is not permanent. It is not your forever. It is a season, a specific, purposeful, time-limited season, and it will shift. Things will move again. Doors will open again. The momentum will return in a form that's better and more aligned and more sustainable than it would have been if it had come before the preparation was complete. And when it does, when the season shifts and the movement returns and the thing you've been believing for starts to take shape, you are going to look back at this quiet season differently. You are going to see it for what it actually was. Not a waiting room, not wasted time, not evidence of being forgotten or passed over, but the foundation, the underground work, the season where the root system formed that everything else is now standing on. And you are going to be grateful for it. Not grateful that it was hard. I'm not asking you to be grateful for the pain, but grateful that you stayed, grateful that you didn't quit, grateful that you chose trust over resistance on the days when resistance was the easier option. Because you are going to be able to see, with the clarity of hindsight, that every single day of the silence was doing something. Every single quiet morning, every day that looked like nothing, all of it was doing something. All of it mattered. So don't resist it. Don't try to outrun it. Don't fill it with noise just to escape the discomfort of the quiet. Sit in it. Trust it. Let it do its work in you. Because God is moving you in silence right now. And what He is moving you toward is worth every single day of the wait.